Hello, everyone. This is Francis Joseph Lamana from newsbuffet.com. And I'm in my tapestry studio right now. And there's a couple things that I wanted to share with you. So I'm going to get right to the point. Now, in Hindu mythology, now I mentioned this before, but I found some specifics. So I wanted to share the specifics with you. In the Hindu mythology, we find the Vedas. According to my study material at the University of Metaphysical Sciences, over a period of centuries from 1200 BC to 500 BC, ancient sacred texts of four collections of hymns called the Vedas came into being. For those who don't know, Veda means knowledge. Now, what is so important? What is so important about the Vedas? Oh, give me 1 second here. Let me turn off this cell phone ringer. What is so important about the Vedas? The Vedas were divinely revealed through the medium of sacred sound to the mythical race of the Indian Rishis. Rishish. Rishis. Rishish. And it is in the Vedic writings that the doctrine of rebirth, reincarnation, and the transmigration of souls first appears. So that's something that I've talked about before. And I always said that here in the West, we have the zodiac, and through our Western astrology, we track the movement of the sun. But when you go out east, it's a little bit more in depth because they have a lunar zodiac, which which is the same thing. It's the zodiac wheel, but instead of the wheel being divided into 12 equal slices of 30 degrees, it's broken down depending on the system into 27 or 28 mansions. So I don't know the exact degree, but it's somewhere, it's like 13 degrees. I think at 28, if you slice the 360-degree circle 28 times, I think it's like 12 degrees and some change. And if it's 27 slices, it's 13.20 degrees, which is really interesting because 13 and 20 is a number that keeps coming up. We find that very that's a number that's used, I think, for the base system for the Mayan calendar. I think 13 and 20 was the base numbers for their system. So 13 and 20 comes up a lot with ancient systems of keeping track of time. And I created a system of numerology myself called Oculus 13. And in Oculus 13, I break down our alphabet, which is 26 letters, into 2 rows and 13 numbers. So it's numbers 1 through 13, and then it's like A through M, and then N through Z. So it's 2 rows of letters under 13 numbers. So each letter has a number to it. So let's just say the number 1, you'll find A and N. Number 2 is B and O. So it goes like that. But the point is that 13 and 20 is sacred. It's sacred, and it's used a lot in ancient timekeeping, calendars, and just systems of keeping track of time or numbers. I don't know exactly why that is. I think it has something to do with the Venus cycle, but if you look it up, you'll see. Anyway, the point that I'm making here is that the East has a lunar zodiac. And I've always said that the idea of reincarnation comes to us through Hindu mythology. So when we get on the topic of reincarnation and rebirth and the soul's journey and all of that, you really do have to go back to the East, to the Hindu mythology where it all started. And that was the point of sharing this, because I found out today that it was in the Vedic writings. I didn't know that. I always used to say that if you look in Hindu mythology, you'll find the doctrine of reincarnation. I didn't know that it was in the Vedic writings until today. And that's something that I've been studying. A lot of people don't know this either, but I've been a student for a while now at the University of Metaphysical Science. And I'm close to my second bachelor's degree. I have a bachelor's in communication, but I'm 9 electives short of a bachelor's in metaphysics. So, and I was just going back looking through all the old work that I've been doing over the years, and I found this in there. Something else was interesting I found yesterday, because I've been trying to figure out what exactly can we look at in an astrology chart to find money. Like, how is income and income potential represented in an astrology chart? Like, what do you look at? Like, where do we even begin to look for that? And all of the houses have already been defined, right? So, like, over the years, the houses have been defined for us. Now, a lot of people will tell you the second house. Look at the second house. The second house is naturally ruled by Taurus, and Venus rules Taurus. So the second house is the house of possessions. That's anything that you've acquired. It could be any type of personal possession, and money is included in that, because money can also be a possession. So it's the house of money and possessions. As a side note, a lot of people leave things out of that house because when it comes to possessions, they think physical, because it's defined as money and personal possessions. People think that if it's not a physical possession, that it can't be included in the second house. But things like faith, if you have faith, can be included in the second house. Um, I think that any type of like morals, values, anything like that can be considered a possession. So people will always tell you to look at the second house because it's the house of money and possessions. And Venus, because Venus rules Taurus in the second house. Venus is the goddess of love and beauty. So they'll always tell you to look at the second house and to look at the location of Venus. For me personally, I feel like you wouldn't look at the second house for income, because remember, the second house is the house of possessions. So how I see the second house is how you handle money. Once you have money, how are you with money? Are you a saver? Do you squander your money away? Uh, do you, spend money you don't have? How are you, and how do you handle money when it's actually in your possession? So that's kind of how I see the second house. I do agree with Venus's location, because Venus does rule Taurus and it does rule the second house. So I agree with Venus, but there's a bigger picture here that everybody leaves out, and I'm going to share that with you. So there's a natural trine that's made between the second, the sixth, and the 10th house. It's kind of like a triangle. Okay. So in my chart, it would be like the second house, the sixth house, and then the 10th house. So in my second house, I have Virgo. And in my sixth house, I have Capricorn. And in my 10th house, I have Taurus. So the sixth house is the house of health, wealth, work, and service. Service that you provide to other people and the service that you provide to yourself. And the thought process behind the sixth house is if you take care of yourself and you serve yourself and you're healthy, then you're able to go to work and provide services for other people. If you don't take care of your health and the service that you provide to yourself is poor or lacking in some way and you're not really healthy, then it's impossible for you to go to work and make money, or it's impossible for you to maximize your potential if you're not in good health. Okay. So, as the sixth house is connected to the second house of possessions and money by a natural trine, there is a connection there. The 10th house is the house of career and your reputation with the public. So the 10th house covers what you do for a living. It covers your career and it covers how the public sees you. Like a good example of that would be like a police officer or like a even like a teacher or something. It doesn't really matter what you do for a living. It's kind of just like how the public sees you through your career, if that makes any sense to you. So when you're talking about money, income, earning potential, you really do have to take a look at, I think, all three houses and Venus. Now, some people will include Jupiter because Jupiter is abundance and prosperity. Um, but for me, I have all three earth signs. I have like a grand earth trine, Virgo in the second, Capricorn in the sixth, and Taurus in the 10th. So I have that grand earth trine, and you really do need to look at all three houses for money, career, income potential, and just Venus's location for where your money's coming from. I saw something really interesting when I was looking over my chart. Now, if you don't include, I have I have a conjunction between Jupiter and Mars in Virgo in the second house. So Jupiter and Mars are conjoined in Virgo on the 7th and the 12th degree. And that forms a trine with Chiron on the 9th degree and Vesta in the 10th degree of Taurus in the 10th house. So I have Jupiter and Mars conjoined in the second, forming a trine or is in trine with Chiron and Vesta in the 10th. And if you don't add any more asteroids to the picture, then the trine kind of ends there. What I found yesterday was that when I plug the asteroids into the sixth house, I have Estrella, Iris, Calliope, and an asteroid called, I think it's Phocaea, Phocaea. Really interesting. So now when I put those asteroids into the software, now you have this grand Earth trine that connects the second, the sixth, and the 10th house, going from Estrella and Iris to Mars and Jupiter to Chiron and Vesta. So when I looked deeper into the sixth house, because I was really interested in knowing what Phoca was, because I've never seen that before. Calliope, I knew that was a Greek muse, or at least one of the muses. So I had an idea of what Calliope was, and I've done extensive studying and research on Australia, and I know that Goddess Iris was the god is the god messenger goddess of the rainbow. I know who Iris is, and I know who Estrella is. Now, when you look at this whole picture here in the sixth house, you have Estrella. The goddess Estrella, the mythology behind Estrella was that she was the last of the immortals to live with humans here on Earth. And the state of affairs on Earth with humanity deteriorated to the point where it got so bad that she had to leave. Like humans were beyond reproach. Like they couldn't be helped. Crime was rampant. Murder was rampant. Rape was rampant. Society had just deteriorated and humanity was beyond help. And once Estrella, who is the goddess of purity, of justice, of innocence, once she realized that she could no longer help humanity, she left and ascended to the stars and was given Virgo. So, for those of you who don't know, the Virgo sign was given to Estrella, and that's who Virgo represents. As you continue to go and look into Capricorn in my sixth house, after that you find Goddess Iris, Goddess Calliope, and Phoca. Now, I did some research on Phocaea, and I'm going to read to you what I found. So interesting. Because they tell you, well, I'll get to that in a second. But actually, you know what? Let me tell you. I read in one of my books about Chiron that if you don't focus on this life, if you don't focus on life and do certain things like finding a career and sticking with it. I know a lot of us bounce around from career to career to job to job to job, and we don't actually accumulate any wealth or savings because we keep changing jobs. We're not making the money because we keep changing jobs. We don't have time to save. And every time you do change a job, like you don't make the same amount of pay. Every time you start over, it's like starting over. So you don't really get to top dollar and you don't get to save. So the thing with that is, and I know that this is for Chiron, for those of you who have Chiron in the 10th house, and the 10th house, like I told you, is about careers and your reputation with the public. Part of the healing with Chiron in the 10th house is it doesn't matter what you do. Like you don't have to be, some top executive CEO. The goal, it really is for you, and for some of us it can be difficult, but the goal for you is to find a job and stay there. That's really what it is. It's about you establishing yourself in the community, because that is part of that's part of the wound for Chiron in the 10th, is that if you don't stay at a job, then you don't have steady income. Then your living situation gets messed up because you can't afford to live. So then you got to move. And then when you move, you're around new people. So you never really get the opportunity to root somewhere. And that's really what this is about. It's about staying in one place and rooting so you can actually get to meet people and have a standing in the community, have a reputation with the people. Nobody's going to know you if you keep moving around. So that's part of the healing for Chiron in the 10th house, is to just find the job and stay there. So Phocaea, which is modern day Phoca, Foca, in Turkey. Phocaea, which I'm going to call it Phoca, was an ancient Ionian Greek city on the western coast of Anatolia. Greek colonists from Phoca founded the colony of Massalia, which is modern day Marseille in France, in 600 BC. And they found Emporion, which is modern day Puris in Catalonia, Spain, in 575 BC. And then they found Elea, which is modern day Velia, Valea, in Campania, Italy, in 540 BC. So the original people, the Phocaeas, um, this was an ancient Ionian Greek city on the western coast of Anatolia, and it was located near the mouth of the river Hermus, which is now Gediz, Gediz. And Phocaea was the location. Now, before I get to that, so now you have this place, right? So you have goddess Estrella, which was the last of the immortal slew with humans. Iris, which is the goddess of the rainbow. Calliope, which is a muse. And then you have Phocaea, which is the last thing before Altair, which is the eagle constellation. But before you get to that, you have Phocaea. What I found was that this place, Phocaea, is the location of the 7 churches in Revelations. And I don't think anybody knew this. But this is like big news because this could give us a time frame of when Revelations was actually written. Revelations could have actually been written in around 600 BC. So the revelation to John, when he says, John, Revelation chapter 1, verse 4, John to the 7 churches that are in Asia, grace to you and peace from him who is, who was, and who is to come. And then he says down here on the bottom that he was in, where was he? Smyrna. Write what you see in the book and send it to the 7 churches, the Ephesus, and to Smyrna. That's where Phocaea is near, Smyrna. And to Pergamum and Thyatira and Sardis and to Philadelphia and to Laodicea. So this place in Turkey was the location of the 7 churches of Asia that John talks about in Revelations. In 1914, Phocaea, which is what it's called today, Phocaea in Turkey, was the location of a genocide. I didn't even notice. Get this. So there was a massacre in this place in 1914 against ethnic Greeks by Turkish irregular bands. And the population went from 24,000 to 4,000 after this massacre. That means that 21,000 ethnic Greeks living in this area were massacred in 1914 by a group called, I think it was the Young Turks, which is interesting because, there's that talk show group that we see online called the Young Turks. I don't know what they're doing now, but I know they had a lot of beef with Alex Jones when he had his show back in the day. But why would you pick that name, right? The Young Turks. Like, why would you want to be known as a group that massacred 21,000? That's genocide. 21,000 ethnic Greeks in this place in Turkey in 1914. Why would you want to name your talk show the Young Turk? I don't know, but they did, and that's who the Young Turks really were. They were a group of people that went and killed 21,000 Greeks in 1914 in a place called Phocaea. Now, I started to wonder, is the revelation given to John prophecy? Did John perhaps see maybe this? Is this what he saw? Now, I'm sure there were many battles in that area over the years. There had to be, because that's coastal property. When it comes to seaports and transportation of goods, everybody wants to be on the coast. So I can only imagine that there have been problems there over the years. But this is a major incident. I mean, this is like a genocide. So So I wondered if that is what, or if it could have possibly been what John was receiving his revelation about. So interesting, just so interesting how those asteroids lined up in my sixth house, and the sign there is Capricorn, and it connects to Jupiter conjoined Mars, which is really abundance and prosperity through war. That's, Mars is the god of war, Jupiter's abundance and prosperity and expansion. So when you conjoin Mars and Jupiter, that's expansion through war, and it's connecting to Vesta, um, you know, to dress in your vesture, your spiritual vesture, right? Isn't that the term? Like when you robe up or you get ready, you put your armor of God on as your vesture, and it comes back down and connects to Estrella and Iris in the sixth house. But I never did join the military, so I never had an opportunity to go to war, and I never decided to take. I mean, even though I have the alignments in my chart where I should be like Caesar, but in this day and age, it's really hard to conquer and you know and just branch out and take over territories and expand. It's kind of hard to do that in this day and age, in America at least. But the point that I was getting at, and this ties into Chiron, which is if you don't find a place and stay there, you end up getting swallowed up by past life guilt. And I've always had this feeling in me when I was young that it didn't stop me from doing what I wanted to do, but I always had this feeling in the back of my mind that was like, well, why do that? Nothing's going to last forever anyway. So I always kind of had this feeling that, like, you know, things can be really good and things will be great, but they're going to end. They're going to come to an end anyway. And sometimes I wonder if that is the past life guilt that I've been harboring, if that's what that's about. And, when you go through these charts and you see these alignments, and, you know, and you're looking at, past life regressions, and now you see how the Vedic text and all this ties into this. So if you go back and you're looking at, or you're doing a past life regression, and you could see these alignments, and things begin to make more sense. If you were living in a place like Phocaea, you were doing really good. You had a very spiritual life, a close life with the people in your community, because it wasn't that big. But you formed this great life with a lot of great relationships and meet a lot of wonderful people, and then it all comes to an end because somebody decides to come in and conquer your land, because they want to be in the coastal areas. So, in the back of your mind, you have like this past life guilt that nothing's going to last because that's what happened in your previous life or lives. You've been a part of societies where they've just come to an end abruptly because someone had an idea to take over. So, yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you guys about today. Revelations, Phocaea, and the Vedic texts, the Vedas, which is really about, which is where the doctrine of rebirth, reincarnation, and the transmigration of souls comes from. So just to kind of go back, like when it comes to income, and like I said, it's impossible for you in this day and age, maybe in America. It's not impossible. I'm not going to say it's impossible. But for you to rise up like a Caesar, for me to rise up like a Caesar and gather an army and start, little by little taking over the United States, that's not really something that kind of goes on here. But the chart calls for that. And I guess we have to find other ways of doing that. But the point that I'm making is that you have to look at the second house, which I now see as not only the house of possessions and money, but how you handle your money. Like I would think if you had Virgo in the second house like me, you're a pretty analytical person. You're probably like about statistics and facts, you probably try to get as close to perfect as you can possibly be. You're probably a really good budgeter. You probably love post-it notes and to-do lists. Like that's a Virgo thing. So I really think that the second house, when it comes to money, represents how you handle it. But you also, like I said, you have to look at the sixth house as well, because the sixth house is going to tell you about health, wealth, work, and service to other people and yourself. So, I mean, services that you provide to other people is definitely work. And then the 10th house talks about career and your reputation with the public. And like I said, it forms a natural trine. So the 10th and the second and the sixth house are connected by a natural trine. So they're connected anyway. And I think that's really what you got to look at. That in addition to the placement of Venus. So if Taurus is the sign of possessions and money and Venus rules Taurus, then we have to look at Taurus's placement or Venus's placement as well. And it's really, really funny because I don't know if you guys know who Jordan Maxwell is, but I've been watching Jordan Maxwell videos for a long time, and I started to think, because he goes through that whole spiel of the maritime, his theory, like the whole maritime monetary system thing. I don't know if you've seen it, but he does this whole thing where he goes through and he talks about how money is compared to water. And in astrology, it's funny because all the water houses are considered mysterious, the fourth, the eighth, and the 12th. And I wonder if they're mysterious because they have something to do with money. That's another thing that I looked at when I started to consider money. Do you look at the water houses or do you look at the earth houses? According to Jordan Maxwell, water is money. Money is water. But, a lot of other people see money as green. So we look at the earth houses. I don't know. It's definitely something to look into. But, a lot of people want to know, like, what do I look at? Like, what is my earning potential? Where is, what am I going to do for a career? What are my options? And there is no quick answer to that. The chart will put together a complete picture, and you got to look at a lot of different things in the chart to really get a complete picture of what that person could or should be doing, or just potential options. So that's pretty much it for today. Have a great day, everyone. It's the 14th today. Tomorrow night is the full moon. And I just put a brand new article up on newsbuffet.com. I think it's called New Moonscope, Full Moon Friday. And tomorrow the moon is going to be full, and it's going to be in the astrological sign of Taurus, of all signs. And if you remember, this lunar cycle began the day after Halloween. It began on November 1st. We had a brand new moon in Scorpio. And now we have the moon culminating. It's full tomorrow, and it will be in the sign of Taurus. And Taurus is the opposite sign of Scorpio. So in the article on newsbuffet.com, I talk about the polarity between Scorpio and Taurus, which is the second and the eighth house, naturally ruled by Pluto and Venus. So check out the article for some information about tomorrow night's full moon, and have a great day, everyone. I had a good time making this video. Bye.